Welcome to the Unity Guide Expert Interview Series. My name is Clayton Stenson. I'll be your host today. This series is brought to you by Unity Guides Incorporated, where we help develop Unity within companies running on the entrepreneurial operating system. We do this through fractional integrator services and relationship coaching for the visionary and integrator. And the reason I started this interview series is that I've met some pretty amazing people in recent years and had some great conversations. And those conversations have been valuable to me, and I thought I should record them and share them with people to add value. And today's guest is Jody Skogen. Jody is an EOS implementer in Iowa. So welcome, Jody.
Thank you. It's a pleasure to be here with you, Clayton. And thanks on behalf of the EOS community, whether it's implementers or organizational leaders. Thanks for what you do to champion what I would call organizational health, right? Helping leaders, and it's very appreciated. So thanks for all you do.
Thank you. I appreciate that. So today we're going to talk about RPRS, or right people, right seat. And so why did you want to talk about this one today, Jody?
Oh, I really love this topic. I mean, everything that I want to do as an EOS implementer, and I believe the people that we work with, who are visionaries, integrators, and leadership teams in an organization, I mean, the heart of what we do is about people. And so this topic of right people, right seats, RPRS, right people, right seats, is just, it's core to me as a person. Like, that's part of my why, is to help people live an abundant life, frankly, whether it's as a leader or part of an organization, as a parent, a husband, a wife, member in our society. Like, that's my desires, and to help people know what they love to do and are great at. You're familiar with the book, The EOS Life. And if those who are watching haven't read that book yet, or listened to that book, Gino Wickman unpacks that sort of picture of doing what you love with people you love, making a huge difference, being compensated appropriately with time for other passions. And I feel like this right people, right seat is like right at the center of that whole desire to live that EOS life.
That's good. Tell me your kind of RPRS, right? Story. Like how it impacted you on your journey? I bet it did.
Yeah. Well, I'm kind of an eternal optimist. So, like, I love opportunity. I love challenges. Like, I love taking the hill. So I've been really blessed and strengthened in my life to have people championing me using my gifts and strengths. Like, even I think back to high school, just conversations, whether it's with, I think about my mom. She would often like encourage me, or teachers, or our pastor at our church, just encouraging me to think about, what I would be great at doing. And then into college too. I mean, I can just think back to, and we're both people of faith. I know that's something that many of your viewers probably possibly share in common. And it's like, well, what has God created you to do so that you can do it and bless people and encourage people? And one of the greatest gifts of that is when you're doing what you love, it's like, you've heard the quote, you never have to work a day in your life, right? If you're doing what you love. And so I look back and think about so many experiences that helped sort of shepherd, and God shepherded me to serve in the right way. So through lots of cool experiences and a lot of people encouraging me and mentors walking alongside me, God led me to be here. Yeah.
It's easier for other people to see it sometimes too, isn't it?
I think it is sometimes, yeah. And I think we could all do a better job of like calling that out when we see that in people. Like, man, thank you for the way you do what you do, or just give some specific encouragement. I think we could use more of that in our
I've
world.
had lots of people do that for me over the years. Like I was pretty shy and quiet when I was young, like very shy and quiet. I
Okay.
was just, but so I was very insecure. But over the years, I started to experience people, telling me, you're really good at that, like telling me stuff like that. And it really encouraged me. Like, I would not be where I am today without amazing people pointing out my strengths. and challenging my weaknesses too.
Sure. And to dovetail into that whole conversation of team, it's like I just love it how our world is orchestrated in such a way where people have different strengths and gifts and abilities. And when they are operating, when they're living in that sort of sweet spot of where their passions meet the needs of the world, you see things flourish, right?
Yeah.
I mean, whether it's a team that is well balanced in regard to different, you know, types of people, right? Whether it's personality or the way they
Mhm.
approach a particular challenge or project. Um, in fact, right before we pressed record here, I was telling you that I'm in the Midwest, and you asked how my day is going so far. And I shared with you that here, just in the last hour, we've been watching a horrific storm that's hitting Nebraska and actually Kansas and Oklahoma. It's on its way to Iowa. I'm here in Iowa. I've got a client in Omaha team that I work with out there. And I mean, the tornadoes that are, I mean, like 7 tornadoes in a particular angle of the map. And one tornado that they were filming a mile wide. And it sounds like the devastation is really significant. Now they're in, those
Mhm.
storms are continuing. And also, on the back end of those, there's search and rescue. And you think about how imperative it is that there are right people in the right places who have the abilities and strengths and experience to do the things that are desperately needed. And not to just put a huge downer on our conversation, but I think it's a powerful picture.
Mhm.
And when we're talking about organizations functioning in an important way, I mean, lives are at stake, right? Households are at stake. And I would even say, and this is going to be big, broad brush here, but I think generations are at stake when we can help help people do what they love and what they're great at, and challenge and encourage them and set up an environment that people can really flourish in. They take that stuff home with them, right? They, at the end of the day, that their future generations are impacted when mom or dad come home and they've been doing something they love and they're great at with people they love to work with. I mean, you got to believe that that's going to impact kids and
Yeah,
even impact
that's
how
sure.
kids think about what they're supposed to do for the
Yeah,
rest of their lives. So,
yeah, that's awesome. And I've been amazed over, the years, like particularly since I discovered EOS, seeing how many different types of people there are and how incredible it is, when you find the right people for the right seat. So I'll give you an example. Sometimes people ask me what I do, like at church or whatever. They ask me what I do for a living, and I tell them that I'm an integrator, like a fractional integrator, and I tell them a little bit about what that means, and they're like, "That's." Some people will say that sounds horrible,
yeah,
right? Like, why would you
right.
do that? Right?
Why would you want to do that?
Why would you go into, a company that has problems and plant yourself in the middle of it and fix it? Like that just sound and solving all the people part, like all the stuff that, we have to deal with as an integrator. Why would you do
Yeah,
that? And I
yeah,
love it,
yeah. That's
right?
right. And hopefully they love what they do and it's very different than
Yeah.
what you do,
But the
right?
next person, I remember one time I hired someone to do data entry, and about a month into it, this was a construction company, and I said, "Hey, let's go to a site. Like, have you ever been to a construction site?" She's like, "No." I said, "Well, come to the site, and maybe that will help you, understand a little more about what you're working on." And so we're driving there, and I said to her, "So how do you like it so far?" She's like, "I love it." And I said, What do you love about it?" She's like, "Data entry." And I'm like, "What?" you you're so weird, I said to her. And she's like, "Yeah, I am, but I love it." I'm like, "I'm so
Mm,
glad though that you love it." Right. And she was
mhm,
excellent. Like, she took so much weight off of so many of my team that were bogged down with details. And it was glorious,
mm.
the impact. So yeah, just a couple examples, in my own life, of
I
how
love that.
it is, how powerful it is.
One of the things that I've been thinking a lot about, and if you know much about Iowa being in the news lately, you might have heard of a basketball player by the name of
Yeah.
Caitlin Clark
Yeah,
and the
I've heard.
Iowa Hawkeye
Yeah, yeah.
women basketball team. And I live about 30 minutes north of the University of Iowa. And so, man, we've just been so excited to see her success. And, we're watching these games, and like it's like their family. Like we're like, Hannah, yeah. And Hannah, by the way, is from my city of Cedar Rapids, but it's like Hannah Stulke. But one of my favorite aspects of watching them play and play so well, and now their season's over, by the way. So
Yeah.
that's real. And she's headed to Indianapolis to play professionally, which is really fun. But when I think about their team, and I think there's a lot of connection to what we do in working with organizations with EOS. But one of my favorite parts of watching them is assists. And by the way, Caitlin Clark is one of the leading assists. You know, she leads in assists.
Yeah.
And when they're able to pass the ball in just the right way to the person who can do that position so exceptionally well and make a basket, it's just so fun to see that. And I think there's a lot of connection
Yeah.
in the business world too. Like, how do we assist each other well? How do we play our position well?
Yeah.
How do we count on our team members to be in their position?
Yeah.
And we score, right? We succeed and we win. And
Yeah.
that's pretty fun.
Yeah. And it's amazing. Yeah. Someone can, like, I can delegate something. Like, I have an assistant right now, and she's great. When I delegate stuff to her, she does it, and she does it better than I would. Right.
Yeah,
And
right.
it's wonderful. So
I wonder, Clayton, would it work? How about we just talk about a little bit of the foundational sort of
yeah,
concepts of this right
please.
people, right seat piece, just for some context for
Yeah.
people?
Go for it.
Okay, you see over my shoulder, I've got the EOS model. Hopefully, people can see that. The 6 key components of a business. And I know those that watch what you create are familiar with it. But in case somebody's watching that has never
Yeah.
heard about the EOS model before. EOS stands for Entrepreneurial Operating System, and there are 6 key components of a business, and one is the one we're talking about today, the people piece, and it's about getting the right people in the right seats. So when we say RPRS for short, right people, right seats, and the aim is to be strong in each of the 6 key components, whether it's the vision component, getting everyone on the same page with where you're going, how you're going to get there, the data component, making good decisions on facts and figures, objective information instead of emotion, the issues component, like how do we solve our problems when they arise, because they continually will. How do we do a good job in team to do that? The process piece, what are the core processes, documenting them, making sure they're simplified, getting them followed by everybody who touches those particular processes. And the traction piece, where we have rocks, priorities for 90 days that really help us get traction to our number one business goal, and a meeting pulse so that we're connecting in just the right way. But I feel like that context is really helpful then when we look at the people component there and we say, well, what does that mean? Because really, this is all, this is your business here at the center. So this is really about people. But this component is like, how do we make sure we get the right people in the right seats? And when we say right people, it's about core values. And I know I was watching one of your recent episodes with Justin Balling, and he was talking about the Vision Traction Organizer, that incredible tool. And the first question that a leadership team answers together is, what are our core values, right? What are the guiding characteristics that define our culture? And we make good decisions based on those. So if somebody is opposite, I guess, doesn't share our core values, they're not the right person in the organization. They need to share our core values, otherwise it's toxic to the organization. So that right people piece, sharing our core values. And as you and I both know, the right seats piece it goes back to an amazing tool called the accountability chart, where we get clear on the major functions of the organization and what's needed in every seat, so that we as an organization work really, really well together. And part of that team aspect is getting clear on what's needed first before we think about what people are in what seats. And then and then we want to get the right people there, right? We want to get people who so maybe can I just write a little bit here
Yeah.
on this board?
Yeah, for sure.
Okay. All right. We'll see if we can see this. Okay, maybe I'll go over here, a little right-handedness here. Okay, so accountability chart 101 for people super fast, in case you're not familiar with it. It's like an org chart, but it's souped up. I like something like it's the bass is turned up on the music, you know, like it's got some great aspects to it that make it a little bit clearer. You have a seat. This is by function in an organization. And then you have bullets, or we call them roles, that the person who sits in the seat is accountable for, so that we're clear, the person who sits in the seat and everybody in the organization is clear on what this person's accountable for and what I'm accountable for. So often this is the visionary in the organization, the top, and this is a person who has lots of ideas. Then there's and loves sort of the big picture thinking, doesn't love holding people accountable, really wants to fly, probably at a higher level, has lots. Have I mentioned ideas? They have a lot of ideas, right? There's the integrator in the organization, and that's the role that you play in organizations. And I'm more of a visionary person, Clayton, so I really appreciate integrators because, like we were talking about, there's some things we just don't enjoy doing, and integrators tend to love holding people accountable in kind ways, but having being a cross-functional harmonizer in an organization, right? Where all these different functions sort of come together. They're generally responsible for profit and loss. And then there are generally three major functions. Of course, you personalize the leadership team to meet your organization. But this whole concept of an accountability chart and having clarity around function and what people are accountable for is the kind of building blocks for the whole concept of right seats, because the box is a seat. So you might have sales and marketing here, ops, call it finance, which is usually how we track money in and out of an organization, how we support everything working with IT or HR, that kind of thing. You make it the way it works for your organization, but you want people in the right seats where when they look at what that seat entails, what they'd be accountable for if they sit in it, and this is an acronym I really wanted to get to.
Yeah.
They GWC their seat, right? And that acronym stands for get it. So when they see the seat, they see the roles for which they're accountable, they think, and they know, and you can see evidence of it, all the neurons in their brain light up. Like they're like, I get it. Even when there's a challenge with a particular aspect of their role or a project, they're passionate about getting after it. They might need some help from people, but they get it. They also want it. They want to sit in that seat. They spring out of bed most mornings, not probably all mornings, right? But most mornings, I want to sit there, and I'm with you. I love what I get to do. Like I spring out of bed most mornings for sure. Like I want to work with leadership teams. I want to help them. And I love being able to do that as a teacher, coach, facilitator. And then last is capacity to do it. You want every person in your organization, you map this out throughout the whole organization, but you want people in the right seats who get it, they want it, and they have capacity to do it, whether that's time or emotional capacity, physical capacity, mental capacity, you name it. Sometimes we can train people up toward greater capacity, but until they're at capacity, the whole organization is greatly impacted. And so I just feel like sometimes we, as people who get the acronyms of EOS, we sometimes miss some of these foundational pieces that people maybe aren't familiar with. We want them to be the right person. They share core values and in the right seats because they get it, they want it, and they have capacity. Okay, thanks for letting me kind of
No,
unpack
it's
that.
good. It's really good. Um, just that reminded me of like quite often I have visionaries, that I meet and they ask me like, how do I know if someone on my team could be my integrator?
Mm.
And what I tell them is give them traction, let them read it and see how much they highlight.
Ooh, that's great. What would that
And
tell
see,
you, Clayton? What does it tell you if they highlight a bunch?
I wore out a highlighter when I read
Did
that,
you?
right?
Yeah,
And I was
yeah,
like, this is awesome, right? Like
yeah.
I was like, we needed this in the last organization that I was in, and I want to be this. Like it just lit me Uh,
You
and I
got
love the
it.
description of the integrator. Yeah.
Yeah.
It was like, this is like putting into words everything that I've felt for years. And I
Yes.
was like,
I
yes.
know.
And I was kind of a unique situation because I'd worked at the company for 3 years, and the owner trusted me deeply because I was one of his pastors before I worked with him.
Okay.
And he said, when he promoted me an integrator, he said, Clayton, I suck at this stuff and I know you'll be good at it. And he just pretty much let me go. He said, let me know
Wow.
if you need anything. And he went and bought another
Love that.
company.
He did.
Yeah, and he went and chased that. And we self-implemented EOS, and we
Mm.
22 times net profit in 12 months. And I
Wow.
loved every second of it. Like
Yeah.
I was like, wow, I feel like I was made for this. Right.
Hmm.
So
You were.
that's an extreme example, but it's incredible when you do get the right person in the right seat, what can happen. And I've seen it many times, and that's my journey. And I love it because of the impact it will have on that person. Not just the business. Like it's great
That's
that have
right.
a better result for the business, but to see people like thriving and absolutely loving what they do.
Yeah. Well, I think that's at the heart of delegating for leaders
Yeah.
and trusting people. Clearly, he trusted you because he saw evidence of you, whether he was able to put a name to it or not, but he saw evidence that you got it. You understood what was required and you knew what to do in the midst of the challenges and realities of that role that he needed you to carry out. He
Yeah.
could clearly see you wanted it. He saw you had capacity. And when leaders have people in those seats,
Yeah.
delegation just looks totally different. In
Yeah.
fact, all of a sudden we feel
Fun.
freed up to be ourselves and not love, in his case, the integrator role, and so celebrating the fact that you're in it, right?
Yeah.
And we can do that in other, with all positions throughout an organization.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Man, I love that. That builds trust right there too. When we then start seeing people really winning in the
Mm-hmm.
areas that they are
Yeah.
in.
And then from there, I just was like, okay, well, how can I reposition or adjust people's roles to get them thriving the way that I am? Right. And it became a
Yeah.
life's kind of a life's passion for me now because of the opportunities that I've had. Um, that's great. So, what about wrong person? I'll talk about that a little bit because I've also
Yeah.
experienced
There are two, yeah, yeah, we probably, everybody here watching has probably seen that. Let's define that a little bit. So again, if core values are the understanding of right people or wrong people, when there's a miss in regard to core values, you got the wrong person. And so one of the biggest questions to start with foundationally is, what are your core values? So getting your leadership team together, um, whether you do that on your own or, of course, I'm going to say, hey, you should bring on an implementer
yeah.
to help you, because we can kind of guide teams through that conversation. We go on a discovery process to identify what the core values are of the organization, the 3 to 5, maybe 7 core values that you're committed to, you're aligned on. It's not just the owner's idea of what the core values are. And generally, the core values aren't the ones that are on the website. I mean, you could put your core values on the website, but they really are internal clarifiers that say, this is what our culture's like. And so if you're interviewing for position here, you need to know what they are. And if you're not a good fit, or we identify that you're not a good fit, you would be the wrong person, even if you get at one at capacity. So we say wrong person, right seat. That's a very common issue in an organization,
Yeah.
where you've got somebody in a role that they are amazing at, and they absolutely get it one capacity. You couldn't have hired a person more qualified or experienced or eager, passionate, have the capacity. But if they don't share your core values, they're toxic to an organization, right? They'll undercut your organization, and really great people, right seats will leave your organization if you as a leader don't make a change on that. So yeah, that can really happen if a person does not share your organization's core values.
Yeah.
It's toxic to an organization. You got to make a hard choice there.
Yeah. And I run into that all the time, especially as fractional roles, right? I'm coming in as a new person with a different perspective, a fresh perspective, and I start meeting people, and I'm like, you know, you can see it pretty quickly, like what this person just doesn't seem to fit. No, wrong person doesn't mean bad person, right? Wrong
That's right.
person just means they're not in the right spot and they're going to thrive somewhere else better as well,
They will.
right?
Yeah.
And so I find
Right.
that when you really do that work of clarifying core values and talking about them all the time, like people tend to self-select as well
They do.
a bit,
Yeah.
and
Hmm.
they'll do that in the interview process too, right? Which is
Which is
nice.
much better than later, right?
So,
That's the time to clarify it. Yeah.
yeah, so I know we're hiring right now in my current client, and so I'm doing the first interview, right?
Mhm.
And I'm mostly focused on core values, right? And trying to understand, whether their core values fit, and a little bit on the skills side, but but yeah, like don't waste your time. Just get to the point. This is who we are. This is what we believe. This is what's important to us. And
I'll give you a quick example if I
yeah,
could.
please. Yeah.
One of my clients, one of their core values is be a strong team based on relationships and trust.
Mm,
Okay. And they've done a really beautiful job, I think, of painting that picture in that first core value. Be a strong team based on relationships and trust. So, in their context, if they've got some interview questions related to kind of sleuthing out if this person, are they a team player? Are they interested in trusting or are they trustworthy?
mhm.
Do they value those things that are beautifully described in that first core value? Be a strong team based on relationships and trust. They're trying to identify that, and I think you should try to identify that through reference calls and conversations as well. But then they're also making sure that the person on the other line, and this is what you're talking about, on the other side, person interviewing is able to see, hey, if you love collaborating with people, this might be a great place for you. But if you love being a lone ranger and you don't like team and you have a hard time trusting,
Yeah,
this is not going to be the
you're
right
not
fit
gonna
for
like it
you.
here.
You're not going to like it. Let me just help you out so that you don't make a big transition and then, a week in you're like, what was I thinking? It's
Yeah.
very helpful for people to be honest with themselves about what they're looking for on either side of an interview
Yeah,
process.
it's also really good for clients and marketing too, right? For me, I'm a very open, honest, vulnerable person, and not everyone likes that. A lot of people don't like that.
Okay.
But the
Okay.
people that will thrive in my programs and my coaching like that,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
Because we'll go deep and we'll go there fast. And I don't know if you were at the EOS conference, but Justin Most gave us this: the speed of
Mm,
vulnerability determines the speed of breakthrough. He was amazing in the last keynote. But just an example, right? Like, and
that's
humility
right.
is also really important to me. So my favorite question to ask in interviews is, "What's your biggest weakness?" Right? And
Right.
I've had people say, I can't really think of one. And I'm like, well, then you can't really work here.
Yeah.
Right?
We will not work well together,
Because we
right?
all have weaknesses,
Yeah.
and
That's
I
right.
need you to be able to share with me when you're struggling on something. And if you
Yeah.
can't be honest and open about that in an interview, then it's probably not going to work, right? So,
I gotta tell you too that Justin is like a mentor of mine. So he was the implementer that we
oh
hired
right,
in our
absolutely,
company.
yeah,
Yeah, to implement EOS. And that's how I heard about EOS. And he started working with us. It was about 2 years in, and he called me after one of our full day sessions and said, Jody, because I got to be like the banner waver in the organization of about 115 people. So I was accountable for the rollout. So I connected with him a lot. Anyway, a couple years in, he was like, Jody, you really need to think about becoming an implementer, which meant so much to me because he
yeah,
is so well respected, but he's
oh
also
yeah,
just like a really great leader, very intentional, great, clear
mhm,
communicator. Um, he really helped the company that I was at, and he lives it. He lives it, right? And that's what
yeah,
we want to see in every organization, whatever your culture lives, right? I mean, because a great person in one organization is going to look different than in
yeah,
another. That's why
yeah,
it's so important to discover
hmm,
those core values. Another major problem in an organization is kind of the flip of that. You've got somebody who absolutely shares the core values. Like there's such a great person. They're like the poster child for a culture, but they might not be in the right seat. They may not
Right.
get it or want it or have capacity or any mix of that. And that's so hard because we love that person. And ideally, you can find a different seat in the organization that works really well for them. But if you can't, they're not going to thrive either. They're not going to love what they do and
Yeah.
do that well, and may not be able to be trusted with
Yeah.
the gravity of the role that they play,
Yeah.
the work that they do to make an
Yeah.
organization work
I
well.
had that actually. My first fractional client, I had that situation. We hired a guy, and he was a great guy. I really liked him. I really respected him, but he was he was more of a visionary type, like a maverick type on predictive index, and he
Okay.
was in a project management role, and he
Mm,
was not doing well.
yeah.
And
Mm,
I had to have that conversation. It's like, hey, I really like you, I respect you, and I appreciate how how open and honest you've been, but this just, and he kind of brought it up first. He's like, this just isn't working, right? Like,
mhm.
and I said, I agree with you, and unfortunately, we don't have another spot for you right now.
Yeah.
So we had to shake hands, and he had to go find somewhere else to work. But again, it was better for him, right? Like he was wilting under the details, right, of a
That's
project
right.
management role. So
And sometimes people need to have permission to like evaluate that for themselves.
mhm,
Even to use the filter, we have something called the people analyzer, which is such a
mhm,
phenomenal tool. It's so
yeah,
simple. It's not easy, it's
yeah,
simple. Maybe I'll map this out here quick.
yeah. It's good too. I love that
Okay.
one. It's cuts through a lot of feelings.
Yeah, because you can kind of have this low grade fever of like something's not quite right, but what's going on here? So what you do is you a very simple Excel spreadsheet, and you identify, well, you've already clarified what your core values are. So let's say you've got 3 core values, and on a spreadsheet, you write those core values. So be a strong team based on relationships and trust. Be really committed to being technically excellent. Be a benchmark. Okay, that's one of my clients. That
Yeah,
3 core values. And then you put the name of the person in each of the rows, and
yeah,
use this as a very simple diagnostic tool to help you determine like what's really going on here, because I feel like something's not quite right. So the core values, and you ask, do they most of the time, that would be a plus. Most of the time, they resemble that core value. This is Sam. All right, Sally. Right, just like this. Most of the time, Sam lives that core value out. How about second core value? Well, some of the time Sam does, some of the time he doesn't. That's a plus minus sort of picture. And how about this third core value? Actually, it's a minus. Most of the time Sam doesn't. Well, we know, especially if we've established a bar for what we need to see in those core values, we're able to see, you know what, there's an issue here. And maybe we haven't been willing to name it or ask the
mhm,
question. But then on the far right side of the people analyzer, 3 more questions. And sorry, there's a little bit of art here,
yeah.
but
You're doing pretty good.
GWC. Okay. Oop, there you go. All right. Do they get it? Do they want it? And do they have the capacity to do it? Does Sam get it? When you think about the seat he's in, okay, and what we need him to do, what that function in the organization is. And these are yes and no questions.
Mhm,
Yes or no, he gets it. Yep, he gets it. Does he want it? Well, and we can see evidence of that, even if we can't, we want to ask them that question too. So hopefully he's a yes, yes, and yes. He gets it, he wants it, has capacity. There's still a core values issue. That's a right person issue. But if there's a no in GWC, unless it's capacity and you've got a specific plan for developing Sam out of that capacity issue, hopefully you're seeing plus, plus, minuses,
mhm,
and yeses.
yeah,
Otherwise, you got to make a hard decision and
yeah,
have a good conversation,
yeah,
ideally.
yeah. And even in the quarterly conversation, you can have these talks with them directly. Yeah, it's
Absolutely.
it's great. And I had this with a client. I think it was my third fractional client, where there was some people on the issues list, and I said, let's do the people analyzer, and we did it, and it was shocking. It was like, you got there's 5 core values, 3 minuses, and the rest are plus minus. and there was two no's in the GWC. It's like,
Oh,
guys, how long has this person been on the issues list? They're like, oh, like a year and a half. I'm like, oh,
you've been enduring that.
I'm sorry, but it's time, right? Like it's just not, it's not working. So it's hard though, right? Because then you have to you have to fill that role, or you have
That's
to fill
right.
the gaps, and it gets worse before it gets better sometimes, right? But it's only gonna stay bad if you don't make that move.
It's in those moments that we need to ask ourselves, are we living by our core values by allowing this person to continue in the way that they're continuing, if it's a wrong person or a wrong seat issue?
Mhm. Yeah.
So if and we should make decisions based on that.
Hmm.
And that can be somewhat clarifying, but a leader, a person, an organization, you're never going to have enough time if you've got right people, right seat issues. If your
Hmm.
accountability chart
It's true.
isn't strong, filled with the right people in the right seats,
Yeah.
leaders get, they're giving up everything, including tons of family time, and they wonder
Yeah.
why and how are they going to get out of it. And we've got these fires we just can't get put out.
Yeah.
Well, go onto the accountability chart and asking right people, right seat, RPRS is
Yeah.
a way to get after that. And you're
It's
not
true.
going to have that time that you want to have to do the things you're great at, right?
Mhm.
And
Yeah.
lots of times that's visionaries and integrators.
Hmm.
They want to thrive and
Yeah.
flourish in
Yeah.
what they do.
Yeah. That right person, right seat person will run with it. They'll own it. They
Yeah,
will shelter you from all of that, right?
that's right.
Because they'll just handle it, and it's glorious. It's
And
amazing.
with the right sort of communication pathways, like the level 10 meeting,
Hmm.
right? Having well set rocks and priorities that allows for the leader also to release, to delegate, because they're clear on what people are getting after. Scorecard that really works well for you. I mean,
Yeah. It's all connected.
we're kind of fans, aren't we, of the EOS?
Maybe slightly biased,
It's
but I
fun to
know.
it's fun to see people grow. Yeah,
I know
love it.
we're running out of time here. So if someone wants to learn more about you and what you do, how should they get in touch?
Absolutely. I would love it, by the way. I have clients all over the country. So I have some virtual clients, and then, of course, in the Midwest and Eastern Iowa, also, of course. So, yeah, my phone number, I put it on my name there so people can text me or give me a call. I love it. You had another person on, Justin, and he was like, I'll call him back in 24 hours. I'm like, yeah, I love that. That's me too. So text me or give me a call if I can help in some way. I would love to.
Yeah,
Love to do that. We want to help first. And
awesome.
yeah,
That's great.
love talking
Thanks.
about this. Thanks so
That's
much for
great.
the opportunity to spend
That
some
was
time
fun.
with you.
Could have probably talked for twice as long, but I think people might move on. So I'm
They
gonna
might already.
wrap
Yeah.
up. So on
Yeah.
behalf of our viewers, thank you, Jody, for joining us. It was fun to hear you talk and hear your passion in it. And if today's interview added value to you, please subscribe to this channel for future videos and interviews with experts in the world of business.